All right, welcome back. So wherever you are, if you are a registered voter, yeah, you should be listening to this. And you can even ask or send your concerns to us. We hope to get some answers. But this time, we've got Mr. Oboefan, the Resident Electoral Commissioner for INEC in Edo State. He joins us from our studios in Benin. Good morning, and thank you for joining us on the program today. Well,
good morning, Chamberlain.
The collection has, good morning, it has begun. There are several stories, but we did hear from some of our persons who are on the ground in Benin concerning slow collection rate by some of the residents who want certain things to happen. But first of all, let us get your impression of how this PVC distribution and collection by the people is panning out in Edo State.
Yeah, thank you very much. Let me start by saying that the PVC collections have been ongoing long before now. The emphasis now is on the last batch of the PVCs that we announced that the collection will start on the 12th of December. That is this week, Monday. So all the people who have registered at different times can pick the PVCs. And in Edo State, that has been ongoing. I have the figures of the daily collection figures from across the local government areas, and also myself and my management staff have been going around to also observe what's going on in each of the collection centers. Remember that the collection at this point is at the INEC office in the local government areas. And the figures, so for instance, for yesterday, I'm just looking at the figures that came in from across the local government areas. I can see from 14 out of the 18 local government areas that I immediately see the figures. That more than 2,200 permanent voters' cards were collected across the state for just yesterday.
Okay, so we'll look at some of those other figures as we progress, because I know that in June, you had announced that you had a huge number of uncollected PVCs and people needed to come forward. But we were able to just take a look at narratives from different persons who were supposed to pick it up, who went to your offices, and some of the places we touched. And here, some persons who were supposed to pick up their cards, they got to INEC offices and they said they were in Oredo, Ego, Ikwabaha, local government areas. And then they said that the residents were told that the cards were not available and that they needed to come back in January 2023. Could that be the case?
Okay, there are few instances where the cards were not available and they were told that they will need to take back. But I don't know where they got the January 2022 date from. There's still a few more cards we're expecting this week and next, and so people can take back maybe in the next 2 weeks. But some of the people who said they didn't get their cards, or they told them they didn't have the cards, they didn't give the full details of what happened. So on Monday, for instance, I went to one of the local government areas, Ikobauka, and I spent significant time there interacting with the people who came to collect their voters' cards. And in a few instances of people who didn't get their cards to collect, I had to interrogate further. And some of the things that came out was that some of them had actually registered more than once. So the last registration they did, they came to collect the cards and they couldn't collect the cards because those registrations were cancelled. Remember that even INEC had before now issued information showing that those who attempted to do multiple registration, their subsequent registrations were cancelled. So some of these persons who said they didn't collect the cards actually fall under that, and they won't tell you the truth that that is what happened. There are also some of them that, so I've talked about the ones that legitimately didn't collect the cards because the cards were not there. And for as many of such instances, we took note and reported to headquarters to find out what might have happened, that the cards were not printed, or the cards are not here yet.
So this means that, pardon me to jump in, so no matter what happens, or under no circumstances should any INEC official tell residents to come back and pick up their cards in January 2023. Is that right?
They may not tell them to come back. They will tell them that the card is not there if legitimately they are on the voters register and the cards are not found there. So the INEC officials will take that information and report back to headquarters for that card to be found. Maybe it's been mixed up somewhere, it's not been printed yet, and then that would be done. And because this process will continue every day, including weekends, up till January 22nd. So at some point, they will need to check back. But I'm not, you don't need to tell someone in certainty that it has to be in January. The cards could still be available this same month.
Okay, because when they did tell them January, and you say it will be up until January 22nd.
22nd.
So,
yes.
but there isn't any specific window for someone who, because the cases differ, who doesn't have his card. Because if, as some are reporting, were asked to come back in January, and you are saying that they shouldn't tell them to come back in January, but it does appear as though, well, even if they tell them to come back in January, the officials in INEC, they may not exactly be wrong, because you say, well, they may either come back in a week or two, just check back. It's indefinite check back up until January. That's the window, isn't it?
Well, if when we receive any further tranche of cards that have not been received now, we'll let people know. So it could be this week, it could be next week. So we'll let people know. But I just wanted to correct that don't need to tell people specifically in January. Because if I were in the people's position, it will sound like, because January is next year, that's how it will sound to me, that you ask me to come back next year. And the collection will actually end on the 22nd of January. So we need to be careful how this information is given out. And well, in any event, let me also say that this isn't a widespread thing. So there would be exceptions, because if you go to any of the collection centers in a day, let's say 100 people turned up, there's the likelihood that at least 90 of them collected their cards. And the other 10 could be that they didn't get their cards because they did multiple registration, majority of them. And then maybe 1, 2, 3, or 5 are those that legitimately should have collected their cards and they are not there. So it's not like a large number of people not being able to collect their cards. That's not true.
I understand what you're saying, but January is still next year, so we'll get the point. But what we're trying to do is to ensure that people, because they have other things to do, so they need to be, if as clear or as certain as can be, so that they don't leave whatever they're doing and then keep coming back within a week or within 2 weeks. So we thought that INEC could be a little more specific as to when it is that people can come back, so they don't go saying what you want to avoid, I was told to come back next year. But that's on the one hand. But for those who may have registered multiple times, we thought that INEC had said anyone who did that, you won't get anything, and then they are notified. What is the process? Is it that if one registered multiple times, or how does that even happen? When they get to the place where they're supposed to register and they present their details, doesn't INEC have a process or platform where they check and see that they've already been registered? One, and then secondly, when INEC finds out that those persons registered multiple times, is there any way of communicating to them so that they don't come crowding out the offices for other people who registered correctly to pick up their cards?
Okay, so during registration, what usually happens for many of the cases of multiple registration is that somebody comes and says he or she wants to register, and we ask to be sure that the person has been registered before. Sometimes looking at the age of the person, you would assume that the person must have registered earlier. And you ask the person, and the person tells you he or she has never registered, and goes ahead to register. And even when you try to check, because people are not consistent with their personal information, they won't use the same date of birth they used when they registered the previous time. They may not even remember the date of birth they used the previous time they registered. So when you key in the date of birth they present to you now, it will not match up with the previous registration. And sometimes also that their name, they're not using the same names or set of names. So at that point, you would truly think that the person hadn't registered. But by the
Yeah,
time
but Mr. Fan,
this legislation,
I thought they
yes,
have
please.
thumbprints. It's the same, isn't it?
Yeah. I'm trying to explain that. At that point of registration, is just getting the information in. The thumbprint you do there is not matched instantaneously with the rest of it that we have in the system. Remember that going into this continuous voter registration that we just ended, we already had 84 million registered voters in the country. So if we were going to use the technology that at the point of registration that will pop up, then it would mean that it would take a longer time to register each person. And people would also complain about that. So what we did was tell people, we expected people to also be honest about this, that if they have registered before, they will tell us they have registered before, and whatever they needed maybe to update or to transfer, or they lost their cards, they needed a replacement, we attended to those persons speedily. But there were people who deliberately attempted to register more than once. And so at that point, we take the information in. Then at the back end, when we now did the screening to match the fingerprints and the facials, that is when we discovered these persons had registered more than once. And we were regularly sharing that information with Nigerians that we have found out a number of people who are, the first time we shared that information, about 44% of all the people who registered were doing multiple registration. We issued that information, I think, sometime in April. And so subsequently, we expected people to know that the technology was such that we can identify. But unfortunately, some people still went ahead to register more than once. And like we said, the subsequent registrations would be canceled. It is deemed that the old registration is still valid and you can still vote with that.
I have a number of issues I'd like to take you up on. Let's start with the first one. The dailies today are washed with stories of an alarm raised by the Northern Elders Forum saying that some people are beginning to sell their PVCs, or that politicians are buying PVCs for 2,000 naira. Are you also, doing this distribution with a warning or with, will I say, a warning of some sort, or an awareness of sorts that, people could attempt to buy PVCs for whatever reason from the people, and that they shouldn't sell their votes?
Well, yes, we do that not only at the point of people picking up their cards, but at all times we mentioned that people should avoid, should keep their voters' cards and use it to vote. I mean, even if somebody takes another person's voter's card, the person is not able to vote with the other person's identity, because your fingerprints must match with what you have in the system, and your facials should also match for you to get verified and accredited to vote on election day. So I think that many people still don't accept the fact that the music has changed and they need to have a new dance step. People still think that, well, in the past, this is how we used to do. Just like the issue of multiple registration. When we told people earlier that they shouldn't register more than once, that if they do, we will find them out and we'll cancel it. People thought that wasn't possible, that in the past we had said that and it didn't work. They didn't realize that we had a newer technology. And by the time the figures started coming out, people had to caution themselves. Unfortunately, some people, it was late for them to now request a reprint or a reproduction of the previous voter registration information they had, that they could use that to vote. So they attempted to do multiple registration. That has been cancelled. They don't have the previous cards, so on election day, they will not vote. When I went out this Monday, I actually met a young man in one of the collecting centers who had that problem. And I explained to him that unfortunately, he can't vote with the new, the attempt he made to register afresh. And I asked about the older registration. He admitted he registered before. He said, oh, it was in another state and he didn't have the card. And I said, unfortunately, you can't vote in 2023. So it's not possible for people, I don't know what is driving that, for people to sell their cards to others, or for people to mop up cards belonging to others from them. Nobody can vote in the stead of another in this coming election. And we've seen this happen in the few recent elections we've had, the off-cycle elections, that it was not possible for people to vote for others.
So, nonetheless, we're seeing a lot of enthusiasm by the people who are going to go and collect their cards. I imagine that when some people find out that they are not able to get the cards for whatever reason, maybe double registration, or maybe their cards are not yet available, do you have a mechanism in place to manage expectations and manage emotions? Because I also imagine that you do not want to have any crisis on your hands, especially, or anything that would endanger the lives of your collection officers. What are you putting in place to manage the enthusiasm and the energy that will be around those who are coming to collect their PVCs?
Yes, I appreciate that. So what we have at each of the collection centers, we have a desk officer who takes those situations where there are legitimate instances where people, their cards were not available or some problem. So, and we also have dedicated lines where people can call in to make complaints about this. In each of the local government areas and at the state offices, we have help desk for that. But also at that point, at the point of collection, we also have our officers who try to explain to these persons what has happened. Like I said, when I went around on Monday, I actually met a few of the persons who weren't satisfied with how they were attended to because of the number of persons each person had to attend to. And in explaining to some of them, they actually understood why they face what they face. I met a man who came with two of his children, twins, and one of them got his card. The girl didn't have her card. It wasn't ready. Maybe there was a problem with the registration. And the man also inquired about the wife's card, and we tried to find out. Sometimes also that they don't give the right information. So, for instance, the information he had on the wife, he couldn't be sure of the polling unit where the woman registered because he just wanted to know if the card was ready. He couldn't be sure of the polling unit, even the details of the wife. He didn't have them in full, like the spelling of the name. I think it was the name Kate. So he didn't know whether it was Kate she registered with, or Catherine, or Katrina, and even the date of birth and the polling unit. So these are some of the things that make it a bit difficult to attend to all the people immediately. But if people come with the slips, it's easier to attend to them. Or if they attend online to have a screenshot of their current registration, it's easy to attend to them. But we try as much as possible.
Yeah, I'll be very honest with you. I checked my slip and it's all faded. I mean, it's just a white sheet of paper now with nothing on it.
No.
Thankfully,
no. Of course, if you came and your slip is faded, if you give us your exact name and date of birth, we can check online and see. And you can even do it yourself and have it on your phone. You know, your registration status, and have it on your phone. And when you come there, you just show us those details. And it's easier to, because the cards are already arranged polling unit by polling unit, ward by ward. So if you go to a local government office, they'll find out which ward you're registered and then the polling unit. So they just pick up the cards for that polling unit and flip through to bring out your cards. For those people who don't have any complications, in some places, it takes 2 minutes, 5 minutes for them to pick them up.
Interesting. I don't know. Well, let me flip this. Let Ayo get his question in. If he doesn't ask this one, then maybe we'll come back to Abuja and ask them. Ayo, please go ahead.
Well, thank you, Markwe. You know, a couple of things just bother, because, of course, coming from the questions you and Chamberlain have asked. So let me ask you, Mr. Efanga, just to be clear, I mean, you, in responding to one of the questions, you mentioned that someone will not be able to vote in 2023. So I just want to ask, this process of PVC collection, who are the people that are likely to have their cards or get their cards when they go to the centers where they're supposed to, and who are the people that are not supposed to? We'll come to this section in a bit. Who are the people that can get their cards, and who are the people that cannot?
Okay, anybody who had registered anytime from 2010, 2011 to the end of the registration this year in July 31st can pick his card or her card. if the person's card is not there, then there's that's an exception. And I've tried to explain the circumstances that could happen, one of which is multiple registration. Okay. Matter of fact, when I went to the field on Monday, there was a lady who picked up her card, and she actually registered on the 26th of July, which was like 5 days to the end of registration period. And so the person picked up her card. So the only people that would not pick their cards, I can say definitely, are people who did multiple registrations, and so the cards were not produced. Okay. There are a few other persons that would be like an exception.
Okay. What are these exceptions, just to be clear? I'm building up to somewhere.
I had explained earlier that some of the cards may not have been printed yet, and that's an exceptional situation. We're still expecting a few more cards that may not have been printed to come in this week or next. There are a few of such. Well, it's not. I can't say for persons who registered at this particular time. That's why I explained that somebody who registered 5 days to the end of the registration still collected her card.
Well, that leads me to the next question of the legal provision in the Electoral Act that we saw a little earlier. The Electoral Act is very clear, Section 47, subsection 1 that we saw earlier, which says, a person intending to vote in an election shall present himself with his voter card to a presiding officer for accreditation at the polling unit in the constituency in which his name is registered. That sounds a lot like if you don't have a PVC, you do not vote. Is there a likelihood that those who have legitimate grounds to get their PVCs, is there a likelihood that some of them may not get their cards? And if they do not, what are their chances? What other options are there for them, since the law is very clear?
Well, we are focused on ensuring that everyone will get their cards. Anyone who have registered and ought to have their cards will have their cards. So that's what we are working on. We don't want to envisage a situation where anybody is denied the right to vote because the cards have not been brought. We'll ensure that all the cards are coming. And like I said, those cards that have not come in are very few compared to those that have come in. So we are working to ensure that all the cards come in. So I would like to focus on the fact that a large majority of persons who registered will have their cards and pick them up.
Staying with us, well, Emmanuel Mark has also joined us this morning in this conversation. He is a former national chairman of the National Transformation Party and former national secretary of IPAC. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you very much, and thank you, viewers.
Yeah, the PVC collection has started.
Yeah.
Are you excited, disappointed, concerned? Which one are you?
I am concerned. I'm concerned because the PVC collection is something that should have been ongoing, but INEC has continued to delay it. INEC first said that everybody who registered before 2019, and January 2022, that they will all collect all their PVCs before October 2022. But what happened was most people went to collect their PVCs, and their PVCs were not there. They kept on telling them to come back, to come back. INEC said those who registered from January 2022 to July 2022 would collect their PVCs in November. From November, today now is 15th of December. They just started distribution on the 12th yesterday. Now, within even the schedule of the time they've created, INEC has given something like a 14-day, they say it's a holiday period, something. And then they will end PVC distribution on the 22nd of January. If you look at it, that's, say, within a period of 30 days when you remove those periods. Then INEC now says that instead of them to distribute PVCs at polling units, they say they will distribute first at ward offices. Now, there's nothing like a ward office of INEC. INEC has office, only the local government office of INEC and the state office of INEC. The only ward office that anybody knows is their polling units. Now, for something like PVC distribution, and considering the millions of people that are going to be collecting PVC, by INEC's own statistics, about 29 million people, or closer to 30 million people are supposed to collect their PVCs. If you say they are going to go collect it at local government offices, you will find queues and upon queues. So, first, it says ward offices for 2 weeks, then local government offices for 2 weeks. Somebody told me that, for me to go to my local government office, the person stays somewhere around Okokomaiko, that the place is very far. Are you sure if I go there, I will get my PVC? I said, INEC said yes, that your PVC will be there. Please go, and go early. This is in Lagos here. Imagine a place like Bayelsa. Imagine places like Kaduna. I don't see why INEC will not distribute PVCs for these 30 days at the polling unit. Take all the PVCs available, give 2 weeks, and stay at the polling unit in the morning throughout the week. And then they say they distribute PVCs 3 p.m. to 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. For most of the South, that's a period when people are at work. So people will hardly have time, except on Saturday and Sunday where they say they will still distribute. But then Saturday and Sunday, you come to those places and you find that it's jam-packed. If this was something to be done as seriously as it should, I would expect PVC distribution starts 8 a.m. at the polling units and continues till 6 p.m. daily for the whole period, and no period for holiday except for the specific holiday days, which is Christmas Day, Boxing Day, and New Year's Day. This is a very important thing.
Okay, but when you say you are concerned, and some of these issues that you have raised, what are the likely consequences in your opinion?
The most important consequence is most people will not be able to get their PVC. You see, take like me, I gave my staff during the registration period. I gave my staff on an alternating basis. 2 of you go, make sure you get registered. So, in fact, one particular 2, for more than a week, they kept on going. It couldn't get to be their turn. They couldn't go, it couldn't get to be their turn. I kept on saying you must go and make sure you get registered. Collection of PVCs now, you will see the same thing. I know so many people who said, in fact, a particular person said they registered in 2011, has been going to collect PVC, cannot get the PVC. Doesn't know whether it's that they don't want to give them their PVCs. In fact, the person says they don't want to give me my PVC, and not just me. You understand? Okay. So what I believe is the time is not enough. Now, look at again, elections begin on the 25th of February. Why end PVC distribution on the 22nd of January? Why should it not continue at least to the 23rd of February? At least that's how it's been done before now. PVCs are collected till maybe 2 days to the election, because it's just to collect your PVC.
Okay. Well, Mr. Efanga is INEC resident electoral commissioner in Edo State. You might have some answers to some of the issues you've raised. Well, add to your reaction, Mr. Efanga, this one from Favor, 24-year-old Uniben undergraduate, who says, we've been here since morning, and that's, of course, somewhere within your vicinity. And they told us the card is not available, but my name is on the system. I haven't checked INEC website by myself, and my name is there, but my card is not available. They asked us to drop our names and phone numbers, that when the card is ready, they will call us. Is this something you've heard of before, and how is it being addressed?
Let me, for the student that said she couldn't pick her card, she said they took her number and they were going to call her back. I hope that is sorted out. Just like when I mentioned earlier about a set of twins that one of them picked her card and the twin brother didn't pick her card. I've just got feedback from my electoral officer in that local government that they found the card eventually and called the gentleman to come and pick the card. And he did that yesterday. So there may be other instances like that, like the Uniben student that mentioned. But for the other guests in your studio there, I would want him to familiarize himself with the current Electoral Act. Yes, in the past, people were collecting their permanent voters' cards up till the week of the election, even a few days of the election, like what we've seen even in the off-cycle elections. The Electoral Act now says that we need to, before the election, we need to publish the details of how many voters' cards have actually been collected and how many are uncollected for each polling unit. So for us to be able to do that, it means that at some point, good enough time before the election, we need to stop the collection so that we can have these figures, because this is part of the accountability going into the election. Now, when he also said that most people will not collect the cards, that's not true. When you say most, it means that a high majority of people will not collect their cards. Like I said, those who may not collect their cards would be a few compared to the number of people who would have collected their cards. So let's also in engaging the system and in criticizing the system, try to be careful that we are not giving a wrong narrative. Yes, we admit that some persons have not been able to collect their cards, even though their names are on the voters register, because maybe the card was mixed up or had not been produced, and we are working towards ensuring that all the cards are available for.
Just a quick one, Mr. Efanga. Just a very, very quick one for you, yes, before I come back to Mr. Mock. You, of course, you are aware of the stories of PVCs being found in, you know, all kinds of places. Is that in any way connected with the PVCs being collected? Are some people not going to get their cards because of such occurrences of PVCs being found in unexpected places?
Okay, now let me take us back in the days to the days when there used to be high level of fraud in the electoral process. And one of the reasons was that people could use other people's identity to vote in the days where there was permission for the use of the incident form, wherein if you were not accredited with the use of the smart card reader, you can now fill a form and say that the smart card reader didn't work, but this is the person and you fill. Then in those days, yes, politicians, if they are honest to themselves, they will tell you that they used to buy off voters' cards from the voters. Just like somebody saying that people are still buying voters' cards for 2,000 naira, because they think that you can vote, you can give the card to any other person to vote.
Okay.
But with the introduction of the bimodal voter accreditation device, the politicians have found out that the cards that they had packed up over the years cannot be used again, and so they were able to turn them anywhere.
So essentially you're saying, Mr. Efanga, essentially you're saying those cards have nothing to do with the elections, but how about the people who are supposed to collect the cards? Will they be able to get those cards?
It's certainly not from the cards that we produce for people to pick up.
Okay.
Some of them may even have been clone cards.
Okay, all right. Well, yes. Mr. Mock, you are a politician, and you heard one of the things that he said is awash on the front pages of the papers, yes, that politicians are buying PVCs from people, yes, stealing PVCs from, you know, all kinds of places. Yes. Is there something that the politicians themselves are missing about the integrity or the patriotism with which they are supposed to engage the entire system? Because if politicians are doing this, it would seem like they're precisely trying to frustrate the entire electoral process.
Let me tell you, driver's licenses are issued by a government parastatal. You don't find people's driver's license lost all over the place. So also are ATMs issued by banks. INEC represents such an institution. The very fact that stacks of PVCs are found all over the place suggests something that INEC itself is guilty of.
Well, he just said now that those cars that are being...
It's not just leave that. It's not true. It's not true. He's not being truthful. INEC said during this voter registration period and transfer of voter cards and all of that, at some point, because we organize people to help people register, especially transfers, You understand? A lot of people have moved houses. People, because of insecurity, have moved from north to south, and so needed to transfer their voting cards. And we're helping them do that. At some point, some of the people who are helping people do these transfers, young people, because a lot of the people are not educated enough to do for themselves, they came to us and said that it's as if everybody that has a card needs to revalidate his card. Now, what do you mean by revalidation? He said that we should all reapply for new cards. We had a meeting with the REC in Lagos here, the Resident Electoral Commissioner, Mr. Agbaje, on this matter. And he said, no, that the old cards are still valid. That is just people want to transfer that should transfer, or new registration should register. You heard INEC saying that if you registered before, you should not register again. Good. If he's saying that those cards don't matter, it therefore means that everybody that has an old card will not be able to vote. Let them answer to that question. Because when he's saying here that those cards don't matter, it therefore means that everybody who has an old card that registered 2007, 2011, 2015, I mean, let me leave 2015, maybe 2011, 2009, or 7, might not be able to vote.
Okay, he will respond to that one, but you haven't spoken to what I asked.
On the matter of politicians withholding voter cards, copying the details of voter cards, there must be, you know, the beavers is an electronic, is a computerized IT equipment, and it's based on the software in it. It is possible that these computers know, I mean, these politicians know that there are ways that with those details, you know, the biometrics of everybody is already known by INEC, because at the point of registration, all your biometrics are taken. And so once they have your card details, they can also access your biometrics. What we are suspecting is that there will be a way for them to vote for those whose details they have already. And for INEC to be saying that it doesn't matter, I don't believe so, because nobody will spend the kind of money they are spending buying cards.
How will they be able to use someone's vote?
See, unless we have
the machine is very clear.
Yes.
You have to confirm with your biometrics on site.
That's the story we hear. But if you've looked at the way things have been done in this country, they are never done exactly as the book says.
Okay.
Do you understand?
Okay.
They are never done exactly as the book says.
My colleague would like to come in. Chamberlain.
Okay, just winding down, actually. But Mr. Fan, I know you may want to respond to that as well as we wrap up this segment. So could you, in addition to that, also tell us, or those who have transferred, I see several questions, they like to know what your advice is for those who have transferred their registration points. They're supposed to either pick up their cards or vote. What is their status? What will they be expecting? Because some say they've gone to the LGAs where they were asked to come and pick up their cards, nothing.
No, the cards for the transfers are also ready for pickup. You pick up from the LGA where you've transferred to, not where you transferred from. I saw a young man on Monday who came, he said he did a transfer and he's come to collect his card. So when I asked him, he actually transferred from Edo to another state, and he was coming to Edo to pick the card. I said, no, you have to go to the state, the local government where you are transferred to. That's where you pick your card. So anybody who had done a transfer should go to where he or she transferred to pick up the card. If I may respond to the assertion made by the other guest, Mr. Moore, that you've tried to explain to him that the only way you can vote is that you come on site and you are physically accredited with your biometrics. And he said that, you know, things are not always done the same way. Perhaps he's not been following the trend of election in this country in the last 2 years. If you look back at the election in Osun, in Ekiti, in Ondo, in Anambra, were there instances where people voted for others because they had cloned the cards or done anything? It's not possible. This is what we are telling politicians. They need to understand that the music has changed and that they can no longer dance to the old tunes.
Okay, so just one more thing before you go. In order to stop all of this, arson for INEC offices, politicians buying voter cards from maybe their opponent's stronghold to discourage people from going there to vote, or should we keep printing these cards time and again? Do you think it will be a good idea to perhaps make it such that if you've got the name, then you can vote? After all, we don't see anyone wanting to sell those name cards, and so you have A lot more people coming up to register, to have the name. They will hold it. Politicians can't buy your name cards. I like to believe, because anything is possible. Do you think it would be a good idea for us to go that way?
Well, the Electoral Act is clear that for you to vote, you must come with a permanent voter's card. And that's what
it's
the
up
law
to the National
is.
Assembly to change that.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Obo Efanga, Resident Electoral Commissioner, INEC, Edo State. Ayo.
Mr. Mock, your final words, so we can close this segment.
Yeah, my final word is this. It's clear that a lot of people are having challenges collecting their cards. On the day of election, if with all of this thing INEC is doing, cards that have been stolen, because cards being missing or stolen or buried underground were carried there by somebody within the INEC distribution chain. Okay, if because of lapses in the distribution chain, people don't get their card, those people who have registered, as it is, their responsibility as citizens is to come out and register. They register, which is the proof by their temporary slips and the fact that they are an INEC database. What is INEC saying that those people should do on election day?
Okay.
Is it that they will not vote?
Well, it's a question, to respond to, but it seems like largely you have absolved the politician and all of this. We'll continue this conversation some other time. Emmanuel Mock is a former national chairman, National Transformation Party, and former national secretary of IPAC. Again, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you very, very much. Thank you.